Your Life and Sex Island, Chapter 6, The Life and Sex Island, page 223. We have explained the cause or causes of our depressions. We have rated our presidents. And now we want to explore a little more the causes and cures of our economic malaise. Back to the two depressions. Back to the 20s and 90s and the early aughts. The roaring 20s were roaring only for the upper classes. The booming 90s were booming only for the upper classes. At the end of the 90s, about 29% under the age of 35 had a negative net worth. Almost 37% of renters also had a negative net worth. It would soon get worse. Anon, about a third of homeowners would have a negative net worth. From about 1923 to 1929, corporate profits increased by about 62%. This was slipped into the pockets of the upper classes. Almost two-thirds of families were below the poverty level. Lending to consumers for consumption grew to be one of the 10 largest businesses in this country, from virtually non-existent in 1920 to $3 billion in 1929. In the 90s and early aughts, credit cards were a major industry and got meaner and crookeder by the minute with chattel congressmen's help. Consumer debt is now about $3 trillion, 1,000 times worse than 1929, not counting inflation. Corporate debt is about $4.5 trillion. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac combined have about $5 trillion in debt outstanding. Federal debt is about $6.6 trillion. That's you and me, friend. That's the highest of any debt in the known universe for all eternity. I hope you are ready for a major fall. I am not. At least the professional liars have shut up for a minute about putting all of Social Security into the stock market. They hid their trumpets and Pied Pipes. Like on the Life and Sex Island, worker earnings fell below minimum needs. No matter how hard and or how smart a family worked and saved, they could not meet essential needs. All workers lived in terror of being laid off, while the rich had more money than they knew what to do with. The truth poets were telling everyone that the rich earned 1,000,000 times what the poor earned because they worked harder and were smarter. At the beginning of the Depression, almost half of all farmers did not own the land they farmed. Farmers and workers borrowed money to buy essentials. Tens of billions of dollars of new stock was issued and sold. 4/5 of Americans had no savings. In 1929, Henry Ford pocketed $14 million that he reported, when Joe Average was earning $750 for a whole year. Here's a 2-inch article from the Post-Dispatch, Wire Services 4/26/08. Quote, General Motors, Wagoner's pay jumps. General Motors Corp. raised Chief Executive Rich Wagoner's total compensation for last year by 41% to $14.4 million. That's in 1 year, folks. As the largest U.S. automaker reported a record loss. Take your pick. Do we live in a meritocracy, a Camelot, or an insane asylum? That $14.4 million for the loser Wagoner is 1,082.7 times as much as a Missouri minimum wage worker would earn in a good year. $13,300. Of course, if a minimum wage worker screwed up everything as Mr. Wagner did, he would be fired the first day on the job and not given a bonus. And Mr. Wagner almost certainly has a far greater income from other sources. Should I shut up now? Did you ever go in to buy something and the salesman starts giving you his pitch, interesting for a minute? Then you feel like saying, shut up already and let me buy. And if he doesn't shut up, you might actually walk across the street and buy. Because this line of thought in this chapter was mostly obvious to me before I started, although I have learned a great deal, and I am not looking you in the eye, I cannot tell if you are nodding in agreement, nodding to keep me going, nodding off, or shaking in anger. I've got a lot more data to back up this line of argument, but perhaps, if you are still in doubt, you can find it for yourself on the internet. This stuff, to find information on the internet, is just so wonderful these days. I remember weeks of library research. It is no huge difficulty for you to do a little research if you are still interested. Before I began to write this chapter, I thought that this line of thought was original with me. It is not. I don't know who the original thinker was, but I have now read others who think similarly. But I hope my mode of expression is original, and the tiresome repetition of our situation in the United States is not original or unique. The economic struggle of the rich trying to take everything and reduce everyone else to slavery or thraldom is hardly new, creating the periodic economic collapses. The tension created by the economic struggle played a major, if not starring role in the French and Russian revolutions. It was certainly a factor in the American Revolution. It was significant in the fall of the Roman Empire, in the collapse of the English, Spanish, Dutch, Mongolian, and French empires. Our question is, quote, do we want to continue doing the same idiotic things and finding the same horrifying results, or expecting some new results from the same inputs and thus be considered by Einstein's rule to be crazy, or do we want to modify our economic behavior to the benefit of the vast majority of our population, and actually to the benefit of everyone? What do we know for sure? What could we do or can we do to fix the problem? I hope that I have convinced you that there is a problem. We will continue. I have to leave you now for just a little while. I'll be back. Please don't take that as a threat. Please join me again. If you are so inclined, please purchase the book, Your Life in Sex Island, by clicking the link in the description below. Thank you for being.